So getting through writer's block comes down to just getting the reps in and just starting. So often when somebody's struggling with writing anything at all, it's often because they've been trying the same thing over and over again and they're not open to a new perspective. So if you start sitting down and making maybe a different kind of style or maybe a different BPM, or you're using a different approach, such as, maybe you're trying a different plugin, you're using a different sample pack, you're using different processes within your DAW, like maybe you do a sound design session instead. So you're still working on production, but you're not specifically trying to force yourself to create a specific task. Instead of trying to make a whole song, you just try to make a build up, just make it the best build up possible. Or maybe instead of trying to do structural things of a track, maybe you're trying to make a sample pack from scratch and like just making core sounds for your own library. Or maybe you're optimizing your template or your workflow. So all these little things adds up, because when you're in that creative flow, you have a time limit of how long you can take to actually finish a song. And if you don't finish that song within that time limit, often your brain goes, hey, this is taking too long. I'm not getting that dopamine fix. Let's go play Call of Duty. You're going to find gratification elsewhere because it's taking too long to finish that song. And often that's why people just end up writing a new song and they don't ever finish the song they were sitting on because they just took too long. They might have taken months to get to that point and now they're no longer satisfied with the end product. They don't like the song anymore and they change it. And it's because they just took too long. So often we just don't take the time to sit down and figure out what's slowing you down. So once we figure out what those things are, only then can you get past bottlenecks like writer's block. And that might be things like maybe you're taking too long in your drops or your breakdowns or your intros or your build-ups. There's going to be certain areas where you just stop and you're just not actually in that workflow, that flow state, right? And that flow state is so special because we only get so much of it per day, where you're in such deep focus and you're able to finish a full song like that. And you want to have that consistently, but there's going to be these things that slow you down. So maybe going through your samples and reorganizing them, or every time that you hit this actual writer's block, like when you're writing a song and you go, oh, like I don't know what to do now, like what, I'm stuck. Every time that happens, you write down why that has happened. Like where are you currently in that songwriting process where this actually happened? When you start figuring out what those recurring problems are, only then can you start removing them. Because often when we're writing a song, we just don't think about it. We just go, oh, I'm just going to try and write a song, full song. And you don't think about these hindrances that you might have. The best way of getting your stuff to labels of any target, it's starting on a more mid-tier level. So obviously a lot of people have the dream of getting signed to Sony, Universal, Warner, whatever, but we obviously want to start a little bit smaller, more like mid-tier. So labels that are like sub-labels under that. And the best way to do that is building association. And so how we get a lot of wins in industry set is through association. So if let's say you want to get signed to a certain artist label, artist management, booking agency, it starts with building association within that brand. So let's say, for example, I wanted to get signed to a certain artist management. I would reach out to every single person that is aligned with that agency. So all the artists that are already signed there, right? The same thing with a label or booking agency. You reach out to every single one, whether you DM them on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you email them, and you just find out what's the best way to send them your music. That's all you're doing. You're not going to suck up to them. You're not going to try and win them over or anything. You're just going to say, hey, what's the best way for me to send you some unreleased music for your sets? And in doing so, you're going to just show them that you even exist in the first place, right? And that's the power of association, because when later on, if let's say you do get artist support from them, even better. But let's say you don't even get that and you later on reach out to the artist managers or label A&Rs of that brand, those A&Rs or managers or booking agents are already going to know who you are, because often the person who runs these places aren't even music producers. 9 times out of 10, it's not, because they don't have any reference to what a good song is. Like you think about a non-music producer who's an A&R of a label, that doesn't exist. Like it's always an A&R as the business person, but then there's also a music producer that helps them out with validating decisions. Like, is this song good enough? Let me know. And so if you win over all these people that are already aligned with this label, management or whatever, there's a much higher chance that they're actually going to listen to what you're sending them in the first place because of that association. And if they then start asking everyone on the office, like, hey, have you heard of this guy before? What do you think of this? And they all say, oh yeah, I've heard of him. He sent me some stuff the other week. I played his stuff, yada, yada. If this keeps happening across the board, that's how you can build that association. And when there's association, that's giving you leverage, because they will actually take you seriously. They'll actually listen to what you're sending them. The biggest problem producers have in terms of getting their shit out there is that email open rates are like 30%. So you think about how many emails these artists, A&Rs, management, booking agents get from other artists. Thousands, right? So you're a speck of sand in comparison. And so if you don't have any leverage in your email, there's a very low chance they're even going to open it in the first place. But by building this association, they'll at least give you the opportunity to get heard. So in terms of finding your own unique sound, it starts by referencing artists that inspire you first. Because let's say me and you both had the exact same skill level, we both would end up with completely different outcomes, because it's not the skill level that dictates what your outcome is on creative level, it's actually your taste. So despite us having the exact same skill level, our taste is what defines us. Like, because anybody could get really good, right? Anybody can get good, but it's the taste that defines you and separates you from the rest. So it really comes down to, how do I develop this taste? And that starts by experimenting with the references that you have. So if, let's say, you pick like 10, 20 other artists that are like really good, that inspires what you're making, and you got to be, diverse with this. You can't just pick like one person or that you'll sound exactly like them. Pick like 10 to 20 different artists, try to recreate their sounds, their production, their structure, their workflow, everything they got going on, right? And then out of those things, you can start to see a recurring thing. Like, out of these 10 to 20 tracks that I've tried to recreate, there's certain things that I really like about all these things that I've done here. And then you can start saving those attempts that you have, those samples, those synths that you use, the structure, the group, the settings you've got in your plugins, yada, yada. Like, all these things is your sound. It's not just what sounds you pick specifically, it's the decisions you make within the software that you use. So it's not only the sounds you pick, it's the techniques you're using, the plugins you're using, the how your template's set up, how you're mixing and mastering your tracks. Like, all that stuff is what your sound is. An example being is, I have this one specific riser from an old Vengeance Electro House pack from like 2010 that I still use today in every single song. Even if you can't hear it, it's still in the track in some capacity, whether I'm using it as a reverse, as like a drone sample, I've resampled it into something else. In any capacity, it's in one of my songs, in every single song, because that's like my trademark. It's like my sound identity, that it's in every single song. And so doing things like that, plus experimenting in other ways and using references of artists that influence your sound, that's how you're going to develop that taste more. When you first start releasing, definitely start putting out bootlegs and remixes. Unofficial stuff has a much higher chance of getting picked up by pretty much anybody. If you think about your general audience, people are seeing your stuff and they're scrolling on their phones. If they see your original show up, they have no association to it. Like, they don't have any emotional connection to your original work unless they knew who you are already. So if you're a complete stranger and this is the first time somebody's seeing your stuff and they're scrolling on their Instagram, let's say, and your song pops up and you're like, this is my new song, they don't give a fuck. They don't know who you are. They have no emotional connection to you and what you're doing. But however, if you're putting out a remix of a song that they have an emotional connection to by chance, there's a much higher chance that they will actually look at this. They'll actually watch what you're putting out there. They'll be like, hey, I know this song. What is this guy doing? What is this remix? And they'll actually check out your song. So much higher chance on just remixes alone are going to improve your content strategy. And on top of that, the same thing goes for artist support. Like, if you're wanting some high tier artists to play your shit out, if you start sending out remixes of, let's say, their own songs, there's a much higher chance they'll open the email and go, hey, this is my song. Like, I'm curious to see what this kid did to it. Like, whether I can get a cool spin on my own song for free and put it out in my sets. Like, everybody is looking for DJ tools and weapons and edits for their sets, mashups, whatever. This is what improves a lot of sets, is having these tools. And so if you're remixing their songs that have already, proven well and they play it out all the time, much higher chance they'll download it. Same thing with just general remixes. If you're sending them remixes of songs that they might already be playing in their sets, they're going to check that out as well. So remixes are definitely a way, not only at the start of your career, but I think it should be a placeholder for the rest of your career. Like, it should be consistent. You should always be using remixes to your advantage.